sprinkling outside a little bit right now. Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. It's the end of the month. I'm filming this on the 1st, it'll come out on the 2nd, but you know what that means. I am going to talk about all the books that I read in May. I did quite a bit. I read quite a bit, but it was interesting. I read 17 books, but not a lot of them were hugely memorable. I don't know if I was off my game or I just had a really tough time picking books I enjoyed. I would probably say half of them I enjoyed reading. I genuinely had a decent time. Yeah, so we're just gonna go through and talk about them. Now, 8 of them we will not be talking about in this video. I'm currently filming another video for a certain romance series that I read this month. There are 8 books. So you'll see that video soon. But yeah, that was 8 of the 17 books. So today we are going to talk about the other 9 books I read. Oh, I went into that whole spiel and didn't even introduce myself. Hi! Welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name is Cameron. I read a lot of books and I have a lot of thoughts about the books I'm reading. So welcome to the channel to hear those thoughts. As we start, tell me your favorite book in the comments below. Tell me your favorite book that you read this month and what you would recommend for me to read. I read a lot. So we'll go through, if you are new to this channel, if this is the first time seeing this video, I have generally 3 goal books every month. I try to read one nonfiction a month, 1 translated work, and 1 classic work. So I always talk about those, and because I am eliminating 8 of the books that I read this month from being discussed, we'll talk about some other things. I really feel like I've been in a reading slump recently, which my numbers would not indicate. It was interesting because I really feel like for the entire month of May, I really felt like I was in a slump. But here are the stats from this month. If you've never been here before, I used the app Bookly to track all my reading. It's a great app. What can I say? I'm not sponsored or anything. I just really like the app. So the number of pages, I read 6 audiobooks. So a lot of my time that I read was audiobooks. So the pages I read, the physical pages I read were 4,086 pages, and I read for 60 hours in the month of May. My reading speed for the books I actually physically was holding and reading through, I was reading about 151 pages an hour, which is also a much faster pace than I have been doing. The series I read, well, I'll just go ahead and tell you. I read the Bridgerton series because I wanted to do a recap video about it, which once again, I'm filming right now, so you're gonna see that in a few weeks. But yeah, I read that series, and honestly, they were easy enough reads. I guess Julia Quinn's writing just really clicked for me because I read those incredibly fast. So a 151 pages per hour pace for me actually seems realistic for those books. But yeah, so my best day read, I read 642 pages in a day and 293 minutes. So, yippee. And I believe that day there was a lot of audiobook reading too. My average star rating, it was not a good month for the books I read. My average star rating was a 3.56. Just because a lot of the books were a little lower rated than I normally do. To be completely honest, I am generally a pretty good rater, but I also feel like I am very good about picking books that I know I'm going to be interested in. And I think I was just totally off my game this month because I didn't enjoy several of the books I read. So, and it wasn't even like I didn't enjoy. I sit in the 3-star area if I feel very neutral about them. So for me, my rating scale, 1 star is terrible. I hated it. I barely finished it. And 5 stars are, I really enjoyed it. It made me emotional. I got very invested in it. So That's kind of the scale that we're working on, and 3, therefore, is kind of just like, I felt neutral about it, or like a 3.5 would be like, it was pretty good, but I don't think it's gonna be very memorable. And I feel that way about a lot of the books I read this month, that they weren't hugely memorable. 6 of the books I read were audiobooks, which I think is the most audiobooks I've read in a month, which, go me. Yeah, and a lot of them were just very neutral to me. There were a whole lot of 3 stars going on. Yeah, you know it wasn't a good reading month when several Bridgerton books were much higher than your average. So, but yeah, so we are going to talk about the books I read, and then we will just kind of, if you have thoughts, put them down in the comments. That really helps my channel out. It helps me grow. We're very close to 1,000 followers. So I think that would be really cool to get before the end of June. So if you wanna like, comment, subscribe, if you like the work I'm doing and you've been here for a while, send it to a friend who you think might enjoy it. But yeah, so let's get talking about some of the books I read. So the very first book I read this month was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I don't know why I chose to pick this book up, because I read The Silent Patient, which is also by him, and I thought that book was fine. Like, I want to say I gave it a 3.5. So it was just I think my library app was like, this is one of our featured audiobooks of this month, and I was like, it's the start of the month, I gotta pick something up to read anyway, let's pick this one up. This book was not better than The Silent Patient. This one may feel so long, but this one I gave 3 stars because it's just so not memorable to me. And I also feel like, personally for me, I think I try to give authors 2 chances. If I read a book and I really, like, I won't say really, but if I read a book and I'm like, it was fine, I generally will be like, maybe some other one of their works is better. This was not the case with this one. I also, just how Michaelides writes his mysteries, I don't think they're very compelling. I don't know if that's necessarily a pacing issue, or like I just always predict the plot twists. I don't know, but none of his plot twists, well, of the 2 I've read, none of his plot twists have ever like surprised me, So, and if you're reading a suspense novel, for me, that's like a mystery kind of situation, it's gotta like actually catch me off guard, there has to be enough story beats where it's leading the right direction, but like, if you follow a trope, I generally, which I feel like this one kind of does, if you follow a trope, I'm just like, okay, that was predictable enough for me to not like it. So that one got 3 stars, but beyond that, I really don't remember a whole lot about it, which isn't a good sign for a book. If your book is just not memorable, then I don't know what to tell you. You're gonna sit on the 2.5 or 3 star scale. So yeah, the next book I read was Book Lovers by Emily Henry. And of the ones I have read from her, it was not my favorite of hers. I do think that I think Emily Henry is very funny. I think she's got a very funny writing style. There were definitely times when I laughed out loud. I just don't think it was her best work. When I read Happy Place, there was a part that I felt like I really related to the main character of Happy Place. And like, I guess I just connected with her so much that like, there were definitely parts in that book that made me emotional. It made me empathize with her situation and like what was going on. But I don't know, Book Lovers was just, like I said, super funny. I think I would recommend Emily Henry to anybody, but for my own personal taste, I don't think it's the best one I've read by her. But I gave that one 3.5 stars. But it was kind of, a lot of these books I'm going to talk about were under the curse of both, they weren't like hugely memorable, and also my brain was making room for other things. Like, while I was reading the Bridgerton series, I was taking like a lot of notes, because obviously I was going to make a big recap video about it. So I don't know if it just was like it didn't want to take up space. I don't know what the situation was, but you know, I just, it wasn't my favorite Emily Henry. And I also think it tragically is stuck with being compared to the next book I read, which was recommended by one of you guys. Like, someone commented this on my video, and I am so sorry I don't remember who it was, and I don't know if I'll be able to find the comment, but somebody recommended that I read The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And that one really, really was good. It was my 5-star of the month. But I will be looking for a physical copy of this because it was so good. And I love books that, like, remind us of our impact on other people. And, like, how a lot of our changes can change other people's lives significantly and we never recognize. So there's definitely time periods when we as human beings are feeling hopeless. And this book was just such a nice breath of fresh air. It made me really emotional, actually, but I thought it was so good, and it was just an exploration of here are all the lives you could have lived when you were still alive. It sounds very, very depressing, but it was actually a super hopeful book. I devoured that book. I thought it was so, so good. So if you haven't picked up The Midnight Library, definitely look up some trigger warnings, because there's definitely dark stuff that is handled in that book, but I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it. So, yeah, that was my 5-star of this month, and I will be looking for a physical copy of it. Alright, so I read several Bridgertons, and then I read Trust Exercise by Susan Choi. Y'all, I didn't know what was going on through most of that book. None of the characters were likable to me. It started out as a teen romance, and then it became like a lit fic, and then it became like not like a mystery, but I don't know. It didn't, maybe I'm just dumb. And I'm absolutely willing to approach books like this. Maybe I'm just not intelligent enough to understand it. But it didn't make sense to me, and it wasn't well, not that everything has to be relatable, but I picked it up because it was like a discussion of like, it's a fiction, but it was kind of like discussing high school theater kids and like their lives growing up, and none of the characters were likable. I've said this before. If a character isn't likable, I don't enjoy the book. I'm way less likely to enjoy a book if the main character is boring or I'm just like not rooting for them at all. Unless it's like a satire, and I don't know, this book didn't feel hugely satirical to me. So maybe I'm just dumb though. Maybe I'm just dumb. If you really liked this book, if you read it and really liked it, let me know your thoughts and maybe you can help me understand it a little better. I also just really had trouble keeping my attention on it. So, my nonfiction of the month, which I thought was very interesting. I didn't care for the writing style, but it was In the Great Green Room by Amy Gary, which is a biography of Margaret Wise Brown, who wrote a lot of like big children's book that a lot of people have grown up with. She was a children's writer who wrote tons of books, but like her biggest ones were like Goodnight Moon and The Runaway Bunny. So if you've read those before, that's the author I'm talking about, but it was just discussing her life and where she discovered she really liked writing children's book, and her life living as a queer woman. Yeah, and her early death. So I think the human was like an interesting person to learn about for sure. Maybe it was just the writing that didn't really stick with me, because I don't know, I gave it 3 stars, but I think it was because I was like, I don't know if this is going to be hugely memorable to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm just in a weird mood this month, guys. Maybe I'm just going through it, and I don't even know I'm going through it. The next book I read was my translated fiction. It was a German mystery book called The Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp. And I think I'm gonna rate it higher than what I originally rated it. I originally rated it a 3.5 stars. But I definitely think it's a 4. I think I made it a 3.5 because same situation with, I felt like the ending was very tropey. But that being said, I really enjoyed a lot of the characters. It's about a group of retirees who all live in a house together, and one of their housemates ends up dead right when another older woman in their neighborhood is dead. So it's kind of just like these older people are like, well, we have a mystery to solve now. And it's so cute. And all of the characters are very, very, like Agnes and all of her flatmates are so sweet. So I don't know why I put that as a 3.5, because I definitely think it was a 4. Like, I want a copy of it. But I don't want to go too much into it because it is a mystery and I don't want to spoil the ending. But my only complaint about it is I did feel like the whodunit aspect might have been a little tropey. And that's the most I'll say about it, because I actually do think, I actually did have a good time reading it. So that one's gonna get switched to 4 stars. And then I read 5 Bridgerton books in a row. So the next one I read was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I'd never read this book before, but it's about the comparison between London and Paris right when the revolution was going on. Like, the people were revolting against their ruling class and they were guillotining people. Guillotining? Is that a verb? They were using the guillotine on people? I don't know. Is someone coming to visit? Meow. Come here. Well, well, well. She has arrived. Yeah, so I read A Tale of Two Cities for the very first time. I listened to it on audiobook, and I had a little bit of trouble at the beginning tracking with the audiobook, like I really didn't know what was going on. And the narrator I listened to was actually a very talented narrator. I was suffering under the beast of comparison, because I and my family, my father is a huge fan of Les Mis. And so in my household, that's always been this is the French Revolution literature. I think the entire time I was sitting there listening to A Tale of Two Cities, I was sitting there comparing it to Les Mis. And maybe it's just bias, but I prefer Les Mis, even though it's 10 times longer. Yeah, I think A Tale of Two Cities also just suffers from, it's not Charles Dickens' best work, in my opinion. And there's so much going on. Like, at the beginning, you're following several different storylines that it's kind of, like, it took me, I had to, like, pause the thing a few times and wiki the book synopsis, which I know I'm not supposed to do, but I was really confused. And once again, maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention as I should have. Maybe I should have read this as a physical book. But, yeah, there were several things, and I think ultimately it just wasn't interesting enough to, like, affect what was going on in my brain. I just, the entire time I was sitting there comparing it to Les Mis, and you know what? That is fine. I gave it 3 stars though. But I do buy classics, and it is one I'm willing to give a chance to maybe in a few years. Just give it another try. But I think currently it's just not hugely memorable to me. And I also think I was listening to it when I was reading 5 Bridgerton books and taking notes on 5 Bridgerton books. So maybe I'm just judging it completely unfairly. Because it is one of the best-selling novels of all time. And if you guys really enjoy it, please let me know why. Because I'd love to give it another chance. Here's another one why I don't know why I rated it 3.5. I'm going to change it to a 4-star. But yesterday, because I'm recording this on June 1, I just finished The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern yesterday, and I thought that one was really interesting. So I read The Night Circus for the first time a few months ago, which was also a subscriber recommendation. Thank you so much for that. I don't know if it was like my favorite book of all time, because I know a lot of booktubers are really, really, really big on that book, but I thought it was definitely interesting, and I definitely wanted to read more of Erin Morgenstern's stuff. So I read The Starless Sea, and there's a lot going on. It takes quite a while for it to all connect, which might have been why I rated it 3.5 initially. But the ending was really, really good. And I thought the whole thing was very interesting once I had the whole picture. So, I don't know, maybe my rating is just skewed, because that definitely should have been a 4-star for me. So, but I would love to own a physical copy, and I think I'm going to reread it again next year, just so I can, like, make sure I got it and it's, like, locked in for me. And then the final book I read was actually a reread. And I don't know why I did this to myself, but it is Yolk by Mary H.K. Choi. And it's about two sisters who live in New York together and don't have the best relationship. And one of them gets diagnosed with uterine cancer. So, the first time I read this, and I'm not going to get too into details about it because I'm not trying to like reveal my entire medical history, but the first time I read this, it was literally the month I had to get an ovary removed. So I read it and it like traumatized me, but I loved it. I gave it 5 stars the first time I read it. But I definitely wanted to read it again when I was kind of in a better headspace. Because like, first time I read it, I was like, I'm gonna die! And it was not that deep. My medical issues were not that deep. I read it the second time. It's still a 4.5 stars. I don't think it's quite so relatable to me at this time in my life, like a year or two later. 2 years later? Like a year and a half, we'll say. It's also really kind of triggering for anybody who has had uterine issues of the sort. But yeah, I read it and I didn't find myself to be particularly triggered or anything like that, and I still thought it was very, very good. And at the heart of the story, it's a story about sisterly love, and I love that. I have 2 sisters, and I immediately like texted them after I was finished, and I was like, do you guys want to come over and watch a movie? So yeah, but really, really good book. I really enjoyed it. I probably will return to reread it again in the next few years. But yeah, that was my only reread of the month. And yeah, that was kind of everything I read minus the Bridgerton series. So definitely keep an eye out for that video. But yeah, have you guys ever read any of these books? Do you guys have any particular thoughts? Did I convince you to read any of these? I'm sorry I was not necessarily the most positive. I think my reading slumps appear as more like disinterest in my book. Not that I have any disinterest in reading, just disinterest in the rating. Because The Starless Sea should not have been 3.5 stars. So I definitely want to put it up to a 4 star. But yeah, if you have any thoughts for me, please comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. If you have been here for a while and haven't subscribed yet, you should do that. If you haven't been here for a while and haven't subscribed yet, you should do that. I started talking too fast. And then today, go splash in puddles if it's raining, wherever you are. Spend some time with your family and visit your local library. I will see you all next week. Goodbye!